Hey folks, welcome to my channel, Authentic TJ. Yeah, I feel like yet again, it's been a while. I have to say straight off the hop, I'm finding this really challenging to stay on top of doing weekly videos. I had a whole bunch banked for a while, and then I headed back to work after my time off from surgery, and since then I've been really struggling trying to stay on top of these. I'm really hopeful that I'll be able to bank a few more and then be able to get them out weekly, but it is challenging. It's really difficult. So if you again can bear with me, I'm really trying. It's really hard to do this and work full time and do extracurricular and all the things, as you can imagine. I'm really invested in this, really want to grow my channel and have you folks be excited about the content I'm putting out there. Today is going to be a first part of what I hope to be a series, and it is going to be looking at, it's going to be looking at my partner Zinni and I trying to become parents. I'm 44 and I have been wanting to be a parent for a very long time. I think pretty much, I don't know, mid-20s, late 20s. I have definitely had a want and desire to be a parent. And one thing that not too many people know is just before I let everyone know my authentic self, probably about maybe a year and a half prior to that, I was very invested in starting the process and looking into what it would be for me to carry a kid. I was very passionate about that, was thinking, okay, yeah, this is it. I'm gonna be a single parent. I want to carry a child, birth a child, do all those things. And then I reached a point where letting folks know my authentic self kind of overrode that. And so the idea of becoming a parent was kind of put on hold for a bit because I really wanted to get to a grounded place and get to a place where I had kind of processed through a lot of stuff that comes up when you start to transition. And I reached that point. I reached that point probably about 4.5, 5 years ago, where I fully felt, okay, I'm ready. And into the picture comes Zinnia. And so she knew that I wanted to be a parent. She also wanted to be a parent. And so we start the process. And I am gonna wait for her to talk more about that. And we'll cut to her now. Zinnia. Hey folks, so I did a bit of an intro, then I took a couple of days off, and now here I am back to talk with you all about the first episode in the series of becoming a parent. Really talking about our journey, the ups, the downs, of what we've been through thus far and what we have coming up, and the whole gamut, the whole process, in hopes that this will be educational maybe for some folks, and will be really helpful for maybe other folks that might be going through something. And yeah, it's a really challenging thing to have to go through and feel like you're alone in it. So any way that Zinni and I feel that this might help others, that would be awesome. So without further ado, welcome Zinnia. Woo! Yeah, so here's Zinnia.
Hi everyone. So I think for me, wanting to be a parent started quite young. Probably in my teenage years, I thought a lot about being a parent. I became pregnant as a teenager, and it wasn't the right time, and it sort of planted the seed in me about wanting to be a parent. I also, at that time, decided that I wanted to foster or adopt. It was a pretty big constant in my life. I would say up until my early to mid 30s, when some friends of mine attempted to adopt through MCFD and had a really difficult time. And that really shifted things for me. I think watching some close friends of mine go through that experience and sort of how long it took, how frustrating the process was, kind of set me off in another direction of wanting to have a child out of my body. Early on in our relationship, we decided to sort of put that on pause, obviously, because we had just met. And
well, and the fact that it wasn't just going to happen, right? It wasn't as though we could just like have sex and like, oh, we're going to have a baby. And starting into our second year, I moved over to Vancouver, and that is when we very intentionally started the whole process. And oh, what a starting of a process it was. We had our first appointment. We don't need to name the place, one of the fertility clinics in Vancouver. And yeah, you walked in and it was extremely sterile, very cold. I personally did not find it inviting at all. You're already going in there pretty anxious and nervous, and there was nothing about it that for me kind of lessened that. If anything, it heightened it more.
So all of the emails that were addressed to me were under the assumption that I was in a heterosexual relationship, that I was partnered, even though, you know, they say that they are LGBTQ friendly.
That was something that they really talked a lot about in their website, brochures, everything. It was like LGBTQ, oh, we're so LGBTQ.
And then from right off the hop, like every correspondence, I basically had to out myself, and I mean, with Tyler's permission, Tyler, at every turn. In every interaction, and had to do it multiple times with secretaries, with the actual doctor, with the lab technicians, and it got to the point, and I'm having trouble sort of recalling all of the details on how we handled that, but it got to the point that we decided to address it directly with the office itself.
Yeah, so this is something that was a bit challenging, and I think could potentially come up for some folks out there. So we are starting this process. It is a very personal process. There's a lot of emotion behind it. There's just a lot of things, like all the feels that come up with it, all the feelings that come up with it. And then we come across homophobia, transphobia, all of these things. And we certainly had some conversations because there was one thing that happened, and I can't actually remember right now exactly what it was, but I recall it feeling very transphobic, and I got quite upset and said to Xenia, I want to talk to them about it. We are going to say something. And then I think at that point, Xenia, not feeling, understandably so, overly comfortable in addressing it for fear that it could compromise the service that we would get, or that somehow it would mark how we would then be treated further on in this whole process.
And we had conversations with friends who were queer but cisgendered, like in both people being cisgendered couple, who said that they had nothing but positive experiences with this clinic, and so it definitely felt like a rocking of the boat. And after having conversations with Tyler, I decided that it was important, or we decided it was important to actually address it with them directly. And it was ultimately like a really positive step, I think, to do that.
Yeah, and I think the reason why we felt more comfortable to address it was because I think at that point we were already on our way out of working with that fertility clinic. Like, we knew that we were not going to be going forward with them because it just was not a fit for so many reasons. That is actually where a lot of the testing happened for Xenia, and for us to then kind of realize exactly where we were. So, we started this process, we were pretty excited, felt like we hit a bit of a bump or a bit of a barrier in that the clinic was the way that it was, but we were like, okay, whatever, we'll keep motoring on. And then we went through some tests, and then I'll let you speak to that because it was more like, it's obviously your body and stuff that was coming up for you.
So
follicle
stimulating hormone.
Okay.
And that is a measure of fertility. It's not the most reliable measure. And so this clinic that we were working on ordered another test. It's called AMH. It stands for
anti-Mullerian hormone.
So basically it's a measure of your ovarian reserve, how many eggs you have left. I think it cost us $100 or $200 or something, because it's a more precise test.
Yeah, so keeping in mind too that there was definitely expenses along the way, right? So we get those tests, and I remember getting called into the doctor's office.
Yeah, like your chances of having a child naturally are like slim to nil. The number of eggs that I had left was very minimal. And his prescription basically for fertility was a very expensive sort of course of treatment that would have involved using frozen eggs. So purchasing another person's eggs that were frozen and using them. And I think what they told us off the hop was that it would cost $30,000. That was obviously quite emotional.
Yeah, for both of us, this was pretty impactful. And, you know, because I think up until that point, we had thought, okay, we just need to get sperm, and then, you know, it'll just happen. Turkey baster, whatever. And so getting this information was, I think it's fair to say that it was really impactful for both of us. I think certainly more so for Zinnia. You know, I admit that it's challenging for me to speak about these sorts of things because so much of it is about Zinnia's body. And so just like at the time that we found out, I was really wanting to be there for Zinnia and feeling pretty impacted, but not feeling that I necessarily could or wanted to really address just how impacted I was, because I really did want to be there for Zinnia. So that was a shocker, I think, for both of us. That really jolted us for a while, and we really stepped back from the process.
A big part of it too is that like so much of our desire to, a big part of it for me anyway, is that so much of our desire to become parents was riding on my body. And I was being treated, like my body was being treated like a problem that needed to be fixed. And that's pretty much the way that my body has been treated through this whole process, is that it's a problem. That's not the most empowering place to, you know, start your fertility from.
Yeah.